Bleach's fade to black takes my greatest fear within loss of memory and throws it upon the Seireitei. Within a movie centering around Ichigo being the only one to remember the existence of our best girl Rukia Kuchiki, I was immediately enveloped within an emotionally familiar plotline that all fans of Bleach are drawn towards, that being one centered on Ichigo and Rukia. Emo goth Rukia, Kisuke and a captain's Mayuri, and Ichigo once more fighting all of Soul Society? Oh yeah, this is gonna be a banger, so if you haven't already, please drop a subscription and sit back and relax, because this is my blind review of Bleach. This film was by far the easiest to become immediately emotionally invested into, and it felt like it was the most balanced of the movies of Bleach we've seen thus far. Within Bleach's movies outside of Fade to Black, the focuses of the film aren't one of familiarity, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it takes a little bit longer to become attached to the plot due to it being new. Within Memories of Nobody, we're introduced to Senna and the conflict she's presented with. Amongst the Diamond Dust Rebellion, we become acquainted with Toshiro's old friend Kusaka, and within Hellverse, well is quite literally hell. However, Fade to Black takes the concept of Ichigo rescuing Rukia as we've seen within Soul Society, and it adds flavor and nicety to it. The story's central focus on Rukia and Ichigo is a tried and true plot method that us as lovers of Bleach are of course drawn to. After all, the story begins and ends with this dynamic of Rukia and Ichigo. This movie was a genuine blast to watch, and amazingly it was on Netflix, so I didn't have to spend money to rent it as I usually do, which is a bonus in and of itself. There's so much fan service within this film and I loved every moment of it. Hell, I'd be hard pressed to find those who don't enjoy seeing Kisuke being able to fight and show off his power. The movie begins with Mayuri quite literally pressing a bunch of keys as he completes an experiment, and within completing his experiment, the power suddenly shuts off as he's met by an unknown individual who slices him with a scythe. However, he doesn't take any physical damage. Immediately I was confused by this concept as the individual disappears, and with Mayuri coming to his senses, if you can even call it coming to his senses, Mayuri expresses mass confusion as he has no idea where he is or even who his lieutenant is. This movie wastes no time with presenting us with the most terrifying aspect of the story within loss of memory, and it does it well. Mayuri's fear at everything around him gives an eerie sense of how it would be losing your memories. Despite Mayuri spending his life devoted to research, suddenly everything around him is unfamiliar and threatening, driving him to start stabbing his Zanpakuto into various things, which sets off a chain reaction with now snake-like sentient oozes forming and attacking the Seireitei. It's truthfully incredibly odd to see Mayuri flustered, as he's never presented in a state of being like that, and with his aimless attacks on his own facility, it drives home the notion of how much power the research and development building has. Within this building contains the potential to destroy the Seireitei, and if left in the hands of a mindless man, it damn near does just that. I cracked up watching Kenpachi arrive to Mayuri, stating he'd been wondering when Mayuri would finally go off the deep end, and this interaction was a highlight of the film for me. After witnessing Kenpachi and Mayuri as a duo in the Thousand Year Blood War, this moment felt all the more hysterical. It's the pot calling the kettle black. Kenpachi, an insane individual himself, had pondered when a fellow insane individual would go off the deep end. Personally, I think they've both been off the deep end for quite some time. Unfortunately, Kenpachi is encased within this ooze, and I foolishly thought this would be the last we see of him throughout this film. While the chaos ensues, Rukia is slashed and taken away by two unknown individuals who sport some ragtag clothing, which is an indication of where they were initially from. Their motive is stated almost immediately within their desire to eradicate Shinigami, and it prompted the question of what would drive these two individuals to have so much disdain towards Soul Reapers. As we're brought eventually to the human world, Kon solicits Ichigo's help reading a note from Rukia, and Ichigo is unsure who that was. My heart dropped at this moment, but not for long, as Ichigo soon remembers her. Fade to Black hits on my heartstrings with these moments of characters remembering all the moments they had with Rukia, and it's not overdone to the point it becomes old. Instead, it's reserved for beautiful moments like this. We get to experience the highlights of Bleach and all the most poignant memories of Ichigo and Rukia's interactions, and with Ichigo's memory restored, our plot then progresses. I'm truthfully not quite sure how Kon didn't lose any memories of Rukia, but without Kon, Rukia might have been doomed. Kon takes a huge spotlight this film, and rather than incorporating Chad, Orihime, and Uryu, Kon is taken along for the ride, and surprisingly he earns his screen time. We're taken soon to Urahara's shop, who also doesn't remember Rukia, but due to his ledger containing her name, he quickly picks up on an odd phenomenon present, and you can see the wheels turning in his head. Urahara continually amazes me with his brilliance, and he may be the only individual whose memory you can take away and he'd still find a way to figure things out. Ichigo and Kon then enter Soul Society, only for their welcoming to be a pretty familiar one. They are immediately attacked by Shinigami as they're labeled intruders and potential culprits of the current snake-like ooze phenomena. It was a genuinely stressful experience to watch Ichigo try to explain he knows them and he's their ally, only for literally no one to remember his existence. Due to Ichigo becoming a substitute Soul Reaper due to Rukia, with Rukia's memory now forgotten, subsequently the memory of Ichigo is forgotten as well. Despite the stress of this memory loss, it did enable some familiar fights within the clash of Ichigo and Renji, and I like how different the fight went as compared to Soul Society. With Ichigo so much more powerful than he was prior, these fights which pushed him to his limit before were now just Ichigo attempting to hold back as did not hurt his allies. I giggled with the conversation of Shuhei, Ichigo, and Renji. Renji, don't let him get away. Renji, it's me, don't you recognize me? How do you know my name? Moments like this I genuinely loved. We're taken back to Rukia and the two unknown individuals, and it's clear these two have a deep attachment towards Rukia as the girl literally cries with her arms around Rukia, and the interactions of these two within Rukia consist a lot of gaslighting, trying to convince Rukia that she was never a Soul Reaper and that she's been asleep a very long time. These two unknown individuals weren't very likable of characters, but in the conclusion of the film I do feel bad for the fate they were met with. Their desires from Rukia center around Rukia giving them a name after all this time. As we know within Bleach, names are a central focus as they give life to everything, and it's a notion I love about Bleach. It's clear these two desire a form of identity and belonging from Rukia, who they had desired to see after so much time. Within Soul Society, the Gote is on high alert with the current chaos going on, and finding the intruder within Ichigo becomes the primary focus. Ichigo has his wounds healed by a familiar face within Hanataro, who remembers Ichigo's spirit energy as when he heals someone, he touches their soul. It's a really interesting concept and is brought up once more within this film within Renji. Souls remember things that even the mind can't, and it was a great callback to Hanataro healing Ichigo in Soul Society, despite being an apparent enemy at the time. There's a ton of familiar scenes like this, and despite being familiar, they aren't trite. Ichigo eventually goes to the Kuchiki mansion and speaks with Byakuya, referencing his late wife and his relation to Rukia. Byakuya's interaction was so different from what I expected. Byakuya takes an interest in Ichigo's relation with knowing his wife and the familiarity he expresses. Although a small piece of the story, it's indicative of the growth of Byakuya's character, that despite being an intruder, Byakuya doesn't strike him down immediately. The Byakuya we witnessed within Soul Society held the law as absolute, but the one we see today, despite no longer having these memories, he's clearly a changed person as the imprint from Rukia and Ichigo on his soul still remains. Eventually, Renji and more Shinigami arrive to combat Ichigo, and we get to see Ichigo's famous words within Bankai, and visually this moment was S tier. Usually his Bankai transformation is fast, but we see the sheer spirit energy pushing the wind around him and sending shock to so many of these Shinigami who had never seen a power like this. It was incredible. Through their fight, Ichigo tries to prompt Renji's Bankai, which due to his memory being lost regarding Ichigo and Rukia, he no longer is able to remember having it. It intrigues me how deep this memory loss goes, and as we see in a later scene, the spirit of his Zanpakuto isn't affected by this memory loss, and it even grows angry towards Renji for not using the Bankai. With their battle concluding, Byakuya tells Ichigo the location where Rukia and Hisana grew up, and Ichigo leaves to find Rukia. And that he does. Upon a hill, Ichigo encounters Rukia and her two gaslighters, and with Ichigo reminding Rukia of their experiences together, she clutches her head in pain as her soul and absence of memory are directly clashing. This prompts the male sibling with the scythe to fight versus Ichigo, and rather than flash stepping, he teleports, which looks really cool, but I'm unsure how he does it. The sister, when expressing her anger, has his dark shadow energy come out of her, and I still have no idea what this power is even after concluding the movie, but my god, I'm a sucker for evil shadow powers. Rukia and the duo eventually disappear as Kon and Ichigo are left somberly, and Kon again has a surprising scene. He speaks on the relationship of Rukia and Ichigo, that despite everyone forgetting about her, that he still remembers, that their connection still remains and they're intertwined, that their bond will never break. I never expected this coming from Kon, but this was the fire Ichigo needed to regain his purpose, and he begins to think on all the memories and experiences they've shared together. While this occurs, Urahara infiltrates Seireitei and speaks with Mayuri in prison, which was a callback to Urahara first speaking with Mayuri in prison, asking him to come be his subordinate in the research and development unit. Urahara entering Seireitei despite at this time canonically being a traitor, it was incredibly badass, and Urahara in Urahara fashion is the key to this entire operation. We're brought back to Ichigo and Kon as they're attacked by Hitsugaya and several lieutenants, only for Renji to actually save Ichigo. Renji was compelled by his soul feeling a connection to Ichigo, and with Renji's apparent treason, the ground begins to shake and the air grows weary as Yamamoto arrives. My god, the fan service of us seeing Yamamoto's power on display is so goddamn hype. Yamamoto throughout this film when he goes anywhere, behind him is always Shunsui, Ukitake, and Unohana. I really love how they move as a unit, and those three are the most connected with Yamamoto and his oldest allies. It makes the scene all the more better. With their arrival, another arrival takes place with Urahara, and he arrives in a captain's Hayori. I geeked out so hard seeing Urahara look as he did as a captain, and despite being an enemy of Soul Society, all the fellow captains outside of Soifon understand his genius and listen to his explanation of the mass memory loss. The memory loss, as we soon learn, is due to a hollow that shears away memories, and this hollow isn't strong by itself, that its power could only be strong if combined with another, those being the two unnamed individuals who took Rukia. Urahara's explanation of the connectiveness of memories was really easy to follow, but I would have appreciated some of Rukia's famous drawings to help with the explanation. A plot point that he clears up as well was how everyone was able to remember Mayuri, and that was due to Mayuri's own paranoia of losing his memory, that he created a backup of his own mind in case of this very phenomena. Mayuri never ceases to amaze me, and hell, due to my fear of losing my own memory, I should take similar precautions. Yoruichi also joins the fray alongside Urahara, and a theme amongst the movies I've noticed is that Yoruichi and Soifon are reunited and fight side by side, which is once more some fan service that I absolutely love. I would have loved to see them fight more throughout the series together canonically, but alas, we have the movies to enjoy it. Their arrival enables Ichigo and Renji to go find and save Rukia, and within the research and development building, the unnamed girl begins to have a meltdown, which causes Ichigo and Renji's travel to be made much more difficult due to flying buildings. Ichigo has another amazing Bankai moment. Literally riding on another Bankai, he activates his Bankai. Incredible. Alas, they eventually arrive and are face to face with the two unnamed individuals, and Ichigo begins to remind Rukia of all their memories and experiences together. He reminds her of the person she is, an individual who risked her life to save Ichigo's family. As Rukia's memories begin to return, it ensues the wrath of the unnamed girl, and she says that if she can't have Rukia, no one can. This very childlike personality of hers is reinforced throughout this film, and it's on full display in this moment. In their efforts to keep Rukia all to themselves, they're enveloped with dark Ryetsu, and they emerge as one entity within Rukia. Or should I say, emo goth dark Rukia, who looks absolutely incredible. I was so geeked seeing Rukia in this evil form because she genuinely looks 10 out of 10. This now possessed Rukia smashes some buttons in the research and development building, resulting in a giant ooze monster, and thus ensues our final battle. This ooze monster, having numerous tentacles, made for a perfect opportunity to see all of our captains in action, and I believe Fade to Black did the theme of final captains all fighting versus the monster in the best way possible. We get to see captains we don't normally get to see fight engage in this battle. Yamamoto even unleashes his Shikai, as does Shunsui and Ukitake. Hell, even Urahara's combat prowess is on full display. And would it even be a Bleach final fight if Kenpachi didn't thaw out of ooze and begin to indiscriminately fight against a giant monster while battle music plays? With Ichigo still fighting and Byakuya arriving to his goth-possessed sister, Byakuya tries to take on the burden of killing Rukia due to her being his sister and his responsibility. But Ichigo denies this notion, and there's a continual callback to the debt Ichigo owes Rukia for her saving his family all that time ago and changing his life by enabling him to become a Shinigami. That he would do what she did for him, and he stabs his Zanpakuto through her and shares out his power, and he expels the dark hollow energy along with the two entities possessing her. This moment was brilliant, being able to see Ichigo have a parallel scene from the opening chapter, now in the place of Rukia. As the story slowly comes to an end, we get to see the two unnamed individuals' backstories of their connection to Rukia, who helped take care of them as kids. Within this flashback, a possessed Soul Reaper almost kills Rukia, only for the siblings to save her all those years ago and die in the process. They used the power of teleportation on the hollow and implanted it into their dying bodies to save Rukia from it, and it resulted in them being sent to Wako Mundo, which then ensues their long journey to finding Rukia once more. I have no idea how they possessed a teleportation ability, but tidbits like this are better off not being focused on. With Rukia now regaining the memories of these two children which were taken away by the hollow, we see Rukia in anguish, and the voice acting gave me chills hearing her cry and scream so poignantly watching these two begin to die. Rukia in her final moments gives them names, Homura and Shizuku, and their desire after all this century finally comes to fruition. As the story closes, Ichigo reminds Rukia that bonds never break, and even if she'll never see them again, they'll forever be connected, and the credits then hit. This ending reminded me directly of Kayen's speech to Rukia about the heart, and is a subtle callback to a speech that Rukia desperately needed all that time ago, and now as well. Fade to Black was a brilliant film, and it fixed a lot of the issues that were presented with the Diamond Dust Rebellion, most importantly, the issue of having too many characters thrown into the mix. There was a clear focus of this film, and characters don't feel needlessly inserted into the story, which unfortunately resulted in Chad, Orihime, and Uryu not joining the fray, but for good reason. The focus on the relationship of Rukia and Ichigo and their bond being forever tied together was a plotline I found myself invested into before even watching the movie. This plotline began long ago, and the movie capitalizes on the attachment of these two characters we've long loved. The music composition in this film was the embodiment of what a Bleach soundtrack is, and along with incredible audio, the visuals, as seem to be a theme from Bleach's movies, are absolutely top tier as well. The reasoning behind Ichigo being able to remember Rukia despite everyone else forgetting her made complete sense, and it wasn't a plotline that I found myself confused about. With Rukia sharing out her powers to Ichigo at the beginning of the story, they're forever tied by this, along with their souls interbound due to their experiences. Ichigo now standing against Soul Society as an intruder twice for her behalf also adds to the full picture as well. The villains weren't overly compelling, but that's not where the movie focuses too heavily on. They're individuals who drive the story as antagonists, but the film thrives on the unwavering focus of Ichigo and Kon to rescue a woman long since forgotten by the world. The fan service wasn't over the top, and it was the kind of fan service I love to witness as a fan of the series. I'll sure as hell never complain witnessing Yamamoto and Urahara scrap against a giant tentacle monster. And oh, did I forget Kenpachi going berserk on a giant monster for the bajillionth time? It never gets old. The connectedness of souls and people is a concept I feel we can all relate to. That despite if we ever did lose our memories and were never able to see those we care for again, our souls and hearts are forever bound to those we love. I'm glad that Ichigo and Rukia reminded me of that. If you stuck around this long, please consider dropping a subscription as these videos take a ton of time to create. Similarly to what Rukia said to Ichigo, this isn't goodbye, but see you later. As always, be greedier.